Welcome back everyone. So today I've got another saber to do an overview slash review on. And this one is a Rudy V3. So what I'll do with this one is I'll go over the processes I did from start to finish. So how it was when I first got it and what I did stage by stage to get it to look the way it is now. But I'll need to do a big shout out to Halliwax because his video on the Rudy V3 was really helpful in knowing, just kind of getting an idea of how to go around doing different parts. And yeah, his channel's great for a lot of in-depth sort of just in-depth information and sort of techniques for doing a lot of the hilts from the original trilogy, especially like the look hilts, like the V3, the V2, the Yuma, Hero, all that kind of stuff. So I would highly recommend to check out his channel. I'll put a link below to the video on the V3 that helped me do this. So yeah, big shout out to him, and now I'll go through what I did to do mine like this. So what I originally did, because when you first get the V3, it's very crisp and clean. Like it's very well machined. It was really well machined. Like really impressed with the quality of the parts. But obviously the V3 isn't like that. Like the real prop is, just because it's a cast piece. It's very beaten up and it's got like big seam lines down it and it's all wonky and stuff. So I tried to do my best to replicate a lot of that on this. So what I first did was I removed the anodizing that was on the grenade and the emitter plate. Then after that I did the physical damage, which is all the, to focus. So yeah, like a lot of the little damage in the cubes and stuff. So doing all of that, all those little chips and dings in this on the booster as well, and then doing the seam lines, or doing suggestions of the seam lines on the grenade, and then up to the near the sort of wind vane area. So there's a seam line on this side as well. From the reference photos I was looking at, it looks like there's two seam lines, one on either side, kind of like directly opposite each other. And yeah, and I even tried to do some of the little sort of air bubbles that are in the real prop from when it was cast, because some really close-up photos of it where you can see lots of little air bubbles from where it just, yeah, from the casting process, and it didn't quite take perfectly, because the V3 is very much like it's almost the same as the V2, but it's like a more of a, not done as well, but more rushed. Not as much time looked like it was taken to make it perfect or make it nicer, like the V3 or like the V2 does. Because the V2 looks a lot more, yeah, a lot better machined. Like it had a lot more touch-ups maybe after it was taken out of the mold, but the V2 or the V3 wasn't, or didn't have as much done to it afterwards. So yeah, I did a lot of that, little bits of imperfections that you can kind of see in some of the reference photos. So yeah, after I did that, I then sort of, the aluminium I sort of sanded down with some like fine grit sandpaper and some steel wool, just to sort of open up the pores on the metal a wee bit more, so that when I did the aluminium black, it took a bit better to it. Because the process for doing that aluminium black, I sand down the surface a little bit, then I clean it down with like isopropyl alcohol, and then heat it a wee bit, just kind of gently heat it to get rid of some of the moisture, and just helps open up the metal a little with a blowtorch. Just, yeah, so that when you do the chemical aging, it takes to the metal a bit better. So I did that. I think I did about 3 passes of aluminium black on this, just to get sort of like a, yeah, just a nice sort of a darker colour to the aluminium. I think it turned out quite well. So yeah, after doing that, what did I do after that? Oh yeah, I did the painting after that. So I used, I've got the paint here actually. It's a multi-purpose enamel. This paint's great, actually. I use this for most of the hilts when I'm doing sort of a matte black. So yeah, I used this paint for the rings and the emitter. And then I painted the copper, because this is a real copper neck. So, but I wanted to paint it copper like the real prop is. So I used this copper. It's like a Frame Builders metal plating copper. It's like a bike spray paint. It's great. This paint is great. Like I've got a gold, sort of like a gold color of this that I use for the heroes and the Yuma and things like that. But you know, this paint, it's like a really great, strong, durable, and you get a nice finish with it. Like it's a wee bit kind of, there's a wee bit of a gloss to it, like a bit of a sheen, but it's not glittery like a lot of other like metallic paints. And I didn't have to do any prep to the paint. Like a lot of times you have to heat up, like get some warm water and heat up the paint so that all the metal flakes float to the bottom and stuff like that. But this, shake the can, sprayed it, it turned out great. So yeah, I'd highly recommend this paint and the gold if you want to do heroes and things. They do other ones as well. There's like more of a bronze paint and there's a silver and things like that. But these are this one and the gold are the only two I've used, but we would highly recommend them. And I think that paint turns out a really nice colour. It's got a kind of a redness to it in certain lightings and also kind of looks lighter in other lightings, like the V3 does in some lighting. Like paint looks a little different. Same with the hero. Like that paint looks different in so many different lightings as well. So yeah, after I painted it, I then went on to do the aluminium tape that's on it, the foil tape. So that I put on here, on the emitter, and on the clamp, and the clamp bars as well. And then also on the groove here, in between the booster and pommel cubes, and then on the sort of pommel cap area as well. Actually, what I noticed from looking at reference photos of the hilt, that the tape on the clamp doesn't cover the entire clamp, like from edge to edge. There's a slight kind of like a millimeter gap, like you can see a wee bit millimeter of clamp that's still here all the way around, which I initially thought was a gap in the clamp, like the gap from the clamp not sitting up flush against the booster. But from looking at the photos, it's definitely extra clamp that you can see here that's not got tape on it. And I noticed as well that this tape, I've got two rolls of chrome tape or aluminium tape. There's this one and I've got like a larger one that's about double the width of this. But this one is like see from the reference photos, this one is the perfect, like when I line this up, it leaves like the gap like on the edge of the clamp, like when I've got it on. So I feel like this is the roll, like this size of roll of tape is the tape they used on the clamp, because they probably thought when they put this up against it, that's more or less the right width. They put it on, but there was a slight leftover gap and they just left it. So that's my theory for why there's a slight gap there. It's just because the tape was almost the right length, so they just used it. And yeah, but I think when the V3 was cast back in the day, the clamp was slid up slightly. That's why there is more of a gap that you see on the castings and on like on the castings, and then that must have been how this hilt was sort of positioned when they used it for reference to make the Yuma, which then became the hero, because that has a gap machined into it, which would be because the clamp was slid up slightly, so that would left it more of a gap. So yeah, so I did that, cut out the holes on the tape to reveal those sections. So this is a Roman's clamp that came with it, so a great quality clamp for this. And yeah, and the slit here has the tape non-removed, so you can see the indentation of it, but the tape's still there. Same with the edge of the end of the screw, the lever. That hole isn't pushed through; it's just covered and you can see the indentation. And with the clamp lever, because the real clamp looks like it's sort of rusted and the plating's chipping off and things, or it was covered in tape as well. I'm not sure exactly how that was done, but I decided to Dremel, like just like I kind of copied the reference photos and put these sort of marks on. I use a pen basically, drew the lines of where I wanted the thing to be removed. Got the Dremeled it off just to give it a bit of texture as well, and then I painted a rust look onto it, and then added some clear coat with a brush over the painted areas so that I could keep them being more strong, so they don't, like, the paint doesn't chip off, because it was just acrylic paints and stuff I used and mixed up. It's like burnt sienna and like raw umber and things like that I mixed up to make a rust colour. So, but yeah, I wanted to keep the chrome bits of the clamp lever still chrome, so I didn't want to clear coat the entire thing. So I just brushed on clear coat on the areas I wanted to protect. I think it turned out nice. So yeah, and also the clamp card, I made this clamp card. I'll take it out. So yeah, I made this from a piece of brass that I cut using another clamp card as reference for size, and then put tape on, measured it out and cut it to cut out the strips on it. So it's electrical tape on top of a piece of brass. So quite a simple little clamp card, but it looks bang on to how the real one is. And what else did I do? So yeah, I also added some extra wee details on it. I added it's like a NASA catalogue number, I think, from when they were shipping it to the International Space Station back in the sort of early 2000s. So I put that on here, and I also put on this little tag that you can see in some of the, I think when it's in the archives, there's like a tag on it, just so, I don't know, so they can catalogue it in the archives. So yeah, I copied that as well. Just adds a wee bit of, makes it feel more like the real prop, having a lot of these little extra parts on. I mean, which are easy to take off. I can take this off, no bother. Also, yes, I have also aligned the clamp in the alignment of how it was when it was sent to space and how it was in some of the reference photos when it's on tour. It's in this position where it's kind of lined up with the cube that's next to the catalogue NASA number, which is almost lined up there. But there is obviously other times where it's basically on the other side. It's like round here, I think, the clamp. So, I mean, I can easily switch that around because this isn't installed or anything like that, so the clamp's not got switches or anything under it. So it's easy enough just to take off, spin round, clamp it back down if I want to put it in a different orientation. But yeah, when it comes to because I'm on the run for Dave P's V2 and sort of Obi-Wan motorized stunt, and they've been talking a lot about the emitters being one piece at one point and then snapping, like on the little join that's under here. I'll take this off. If I can get it off. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about this snapping here. Like when they cast it, it was cast as one piece, but at some point probably dropped, and the V2 and the V3 snapped, like on this thin point in here. So what I think with the V3 when that, because like there is photos I found of the V3 emitter is in different positions, like when it isn't the same alignment as this, which you see in a lot of the photos. It's in this alignment where like they're kind of like at this angle from each other, these two like screws. But in other ones I found where you can see this but you can't see this, and so like I feel like this does spin but is locked down in place with these screws, so that's why it's in this position most of the time. But you see it in a lot of the photos is because it's when these are tightened down, it stays where it is and doesn't spin. Because there would have been like a rod in here that's probably is held in up here with this screw and is held down here with this screw, so that when the two of them are locked down on the rod, they don't spin. But maybe at some point this has came loose a little bit and it's moved, and that's why this looks like it's in a different position sometimes. But with the V3, with the V2, that's held down differently. I think that's held down with a thing. There's something in here attached to the rod that holds it in here, and then up here it's held in with like the screws on the nipple that sticks out of the V2, and maybe the screws as well that are on the emitter lip that are holding the top part of the thing in, and this is down here is holding this. But obviously with they'll eventually have taken the blade off and all that, and it probably starts to spin freely and all that kind of thing. So it got held down with gaffer tape on the neck. But this one is held down with these two screws to stop this spinning. At least that's what I think. I mean, I'm just sort of theorizing. And then in here, I actually just made a makeshift sort of like faux, like a resemblance of the sort of coupler or whatever that's inside the emitter on the V3 still. Because this one doesn't come with a blade plug or anything, because there's no, it's just a kind of empty hole more or less in there. So what this is a plastic CoverTech wheel that I cut in half, put inside a heatsink, and sort of sat the heatsink in there, and the heatsink's held in. Actually, I'll take off the emitter ring. So yeah, it's just a heatsink that I sat in here. I think this heatsink's from, it's either from my Leia or one of the heatsinks that comes with the Mum of All Heroes from Seven Chambers. So it's one of those heatsinks that I just sort of sat in there with this in, some electrical tape to stop it being like shiny and just make it black, and then it's just held down with the blade retention screw in here. So I think it's a very kind of jerry rig of a setup, but it looks the part. Because I am planning on maybe doing the rod, like a rod through here at some point, maybe. We'll see. Not sure. Because the rod would probably help the security of this. Because I mean, I know like it's probably strong enough, but because it's so thin there, and this is copper. Copper's not the strongest metal, so I'd worry about that. Like if this took a bang on here, that this might damage, and it might bend or something, or break like the roof prop. At least like we think the roof prop did. So trying to think, is there anything else I want to go over? I should really plan out these videos before I do them. I kind of just start talking and then see what happens. So sorry if it's a bit rambling all over the place. I also, in the grooves in here, I added to me light sand. Just sort of, you can kind of see it, you kind of can't. You can see it a wee bit, like in some of the grooves in here. It adds just a bit more dimension, and when you look at the real one on display, it's got like dust maybe and stuff in there, so the light sand looks the part for dust, so I just sort of used that. I think is there anything else I want to go over on it? No, I think that's more or less all I wanted to discuss on the V3. So yeah, again, I hope this was informative and made sense and not just me rambling the entire time. But yeah, so I really do, actually the V3 has really grown on me. Like when I first got into like the look Return of the Jedi sabers, I really love the V2, but now that I've seen the V3 a lot and like been like when I was looking at a lot of reference photos and stuff to try and do this, the V3 has really grown on me as like one that I really like. It's so kind of, I don't know, like it's kind of ugly looking, but it's kind of great for that reason, just because it looks so beaten up, and I like that about a lot of sabers. Like some that are too clean, I don't find them that interesting to look at. If that makes sense. Like the more sort of bits of damage and dings and paint and like odd and asymmetrical things and like odd alignments and stuff like that make it more interesting for me to look at and to enjoy, rather than a lot of nice, crisp, clean, perfect looking sabers. So it's probably a reason this has grown on me, because it is such a workhorse of a saber, like because it's like the dueling saber from Return of the Jedi, or one of them, one of the ones they would use for doing the duel between Vader and Luke at the end and stuff. So it's kind of one that feels like it could just take a beating and be fine. Like the hero wouldn't be that practical for doing a lot of that, I don't think. So, but this one just feels like a workhorse, which I kind of love about it. This is kind of one I take around a lot with me if I'm going somewhere, because like I'm not that worried about it getting damaged. As much as I don't get them damaged. I don't want to get them damaged, but I'm very like this one feels like it can like hide some of the damage if anything did happen. But if you're taking the not the V2, V1 like the hero around, like I'd be worried about damaging parts of it and being like, oh no, because it's such a clean looking saber, the V1 like the hero, any little bit of like if there was like a ding on the sort of booster or something like that, you'd be like, that's the only thing I would look at, because it's such a more, well, it's not, I mean the prop isn't perfectly clean, it's a bit like has its own flaws, but it's more or less quite clean looking compared to a lot of compared to this and the V2 and things. So yeah, this is definitely one, it's like a workhorse kind of one that I enjoy taking around. So it's really grown on in me. Yeah, sorry for then almost finishing the video and then rambling on even more. But yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'm going to start doing these more regularly, because I did the V2, not V2, I did the, what do you call it, the ESB Graphics just the other day, so I'm hoping to do them, yeah, get them out more regularly, because I do quite enjoy it. It's good to just sort of sit and talk about them and look at the sabers a bit more. Not that I don't do that all the time anyway. But yeah, hope it was informative, and leave me any comments or anything if you've got any questions about it, and I'll leave a link to any relevant information like the video from Halliwax and stuff like that below. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.